welcome to episode 2 of We All Have Stuff.
Hi, I'm Gabby.
And I'm Alessia. And if you did not see the first episode, our podcast is more of us just all having stuff and giving a space for us all to talk about it. So
that's right. Yeah. So last episode we talked about communicating and why it's hard for us. And this time we wanted to talk about something kind of similar, about where you feel like you have needs and your cup is constantly running empty because of the demands on life and just how crazy life is, but also having to balance making sure that your responsibilities are fulfilled and everyone around you is having their needs met too.
Right.
So why is that so hard?
Well, I think there's a lot of reasons, which is why we wanted to talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's really hard to just own that you're going through stuff, and a lot of us have the thought process of like, I don't want to put my stuff on other people.
Right.
I don't want to be a burden on somebody. I don't want to cause them more stuff in their life. They have too much going on.
Right.
So let me just try to handle it myself.
Right.
And that gets us nowhere.
Right. And that's super lonely.
Super.
Also, which I feel like
I felt that when you said it.
Yeah, it is super lonely because you feel like, hey, I'm being the best friend, I'm being the best parent, the best partner, and yet you're like...
Or like the perfect.
Right, the perfect, yeah, you have all of these like areas of your life, the perfect worker, the perfect boss, whatever it is, and yet you're just like exhausted at the end of every single day.
Legit perishing.
Why? Like, I just think about like all of my needs, right? Like just emotionally just being depleted at the end of every single day. Because
what do you think in your life, like what role specifically do you play that you feel is the hardest for you to do this topic, which is like, you're like depleted, but you have to give, and you have to be aware of other people.
Yeah.
What is it like for you? Because we all have different roles that we play that might be harder for each of us.
Right. I think for me, honestly, I've had a major identity shift in the last few years where like I was fulfilled by having deadlines and having like a very specific, like rigid, like I had responsibilities that like I had 100% control over all the time. And honestly, I think what's hard for me is like it's been a tremendous shift into being a parent, honestly, because like I have responsibilities, I have needs, but the three little people that like depend on me are all individual different people that have different like thresholds for stuff, like
that need like legit need their needs met because they're children.
Because they're kids, right? Yeah. And there's no predictability. Like your kids can wake up on the wrong side of the bed and like your whole day is just gone, and that's really hard, honestly, because you feel like you're fighting battles all day long that you have to win because that's how you keep your boundaries, right? Yeah. But it's exhausting to just do that all day, especially if it's like a fixation on something. And that's the way kids are, like one thing is just gonna snowball their entire day. And it makes it so hard to get stuff done.
Yeah.
So that's really hard for me because I feel like I don't get a moment to breathe sometimes where like you need to breathe when you're reaching your point. You're like at your absolute limit, and that is hard.
I mean, I don't have kids, but I'm assuming dealing with couples and families and knowing how kids are.
Yeah.
That's also hard because you're not dealing with an adult,
right,
who is like,
rational.
Let me communicate my needs to you. Yeah. It's like, I know that my job is to give you your unmet needs.
Right.
I'm the person doing that. So like, what do I do? Because I can't communicate really to you. It leads back to our first episode of like, you're not going to win an argument with a 3-year-old.
That's right.
Like,
never. Yeah.
They're right. Their emotions in their world are like,
right.
They make sense in their world, but to us, we're like, how do you say like, hey, this little thing is not a big deal when in their world it's a huge deal.
It is. And I think also, this is one of the most isolating parts of being even a teacher, like not even just a parent, but like being responsible for little tiny humans that are empathetic in some way, but it doesn't come naturally to them. So they are not going to always be like, and how are you doing?
Right.
When you're at your absolute like bottom, it's like the worst of the worst. You can't imagine, like you have no emotional capacity for anything. They're not going to check on you. you know, and
it's not their job to
it's
either.
not their job,
Yeah.
right? Exactly. But you're like, dang, it would feel so nice for someone to be like, Mom, you seem like you're having a hard time right now,
Yeah.
you know, and like, it's not always easy to communicate that, like, I'm having a hard time and you are 4, but you need to understand that and give me space. Like,
yeah, right.
in an ideal world, like, that happens.
Yeah.
But, you know, when you're running on 100% like fumes, like, this is why there's so many memes about like being a parent, being a partner, and like just a normal person, even like living on iced coffee. Like, yeah, because like
Unhealthy.
that is the one thing.
That's
and you know
unhealthy.
what?
Don't
it is
live on iced
unhealthy.
coffee.
No, don't live on iced coffee. But like it is the reality, unfortunately.
Yeah, yeah.
And you know why? I was thinking about this because
Iced coffee.
when I treat myself, like I leave the house and like I deserve iced coffee. You know why? And this is why all moms should feel this way, because that is the one thing that you get every single day that is 100% done and handed to you with no effort. That's why.
I like that. Now
That's
I'm going to
why.
think about that every time I get coffee now.
Because I can make myself a cup of coffee, but you know what? I have to do it.
You're like, I need something
done for me. So yes, I want a super complicated order, but like someone is like, here
Somebody's
you go,
meeting my
enjoy
need.
it. Yeah, like literally, that's why.
Yeah,
so I don't have any
makes sense.
guilt. I have no guilt about it.
Yeah.
And yeah, like it might be an expensive habit, but like that is meeting my needs.
Yeah. Especially because I know you're not like, and to each their own, everybody has different needs, but you're not a materialistic person. You're not like, hey, I want to always go get my hair done or always get my nails done. Like occasionally, yeah.
Right.
But you're not like, that's not really your thing all the time.
Right.
But so if it's like day-to-day stuff, it's
Right.
like I just want somebody to do something for me.
Yes.
While I have to give all of myself to these little kids all day, it's hard.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you know, it's like kind of silly to think about that, but in all honesty, like, though you have to identify like what is going to meet like the most basic level of your need, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because you're not always going to be all of your cups of like emotional needs, instrumental support, which like for non-psychology people, that's like physical things in your life that would be helpful, right? Like someone saying, hey, I know you hate laundry and like you're overwhelmed with other stuff, like let me help you with that.
Yeah.
That is helpful, but you know, that's not always going to be feasible or possible. So like sometimes you just need the bare minimum of like, I need you to tag me out so I can breathe for 5 minutes because like I really just like am at my limit.
Yeah. I think that's like an important thing to talk about with partners, right? Like when you have families and family units, or not even just partners, like family members too, right? So it's like, who do you lean on when you're struggling?
Right.
You know, who do you go to of like, hey, my husband, hey, my wife, hey, family member, like I'm done and I need somebody to come check me out and clock in the game because I am unwell.
Yeah, right.
And a lot of times people don't have that.
That's right.
A lot of people don't have families. People don't have partners that are able to, and at least asking for it. Like I always encourage, like try to at least ask. It doesn't mean you're always gonna get your need met, which is the hard thing. Like a lot of times I'll have clients who'll be like, "There's just no point of asking."
Right.
Which sometimes I guess if you're in a situation where you know like this person is not able.
Yeah.
But a lot of times people are not aware of other people that really actually want to help because they're like, I don't want to put that on
you. Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's hard to also ask for help, right? Because you don't want to feel vulnerable. You don't want to feel like
that part.
You know, and you don't want people who are maybe not nearby. Like the culture that we live in is that nobody really lives super close to their family anymore, right? Like it's always, oh, they're in another state, or we've decided to meet our dream and like move far away. So like I know that sometimes I'm having a hard time with whatever, and I don't want to call up my mom and be like, hey, I'm like really having a hard time, because what is she gonna do if she can't come down, you know?
Yeah, but actually, if I can chime in.
Yeah.
Because my thing, and I know Gabby has this issue because she likes to do things all by herself, which I get, I do too in certain ways.
Yeah.
But, and I do this with my mom when I'm just struggling, and I had to learn a lot about myself in the sense of, I used to say that a lot. Like, what's the point? What's the point of calling? She can't fix my problem.
Right.
But a lot of times, emotional health is, maybe I just need to call and just vent and bitch. And my mom used to, God love you, Mom, because I know you're going to watch this eventually. But I remember when I was in grad school, like just struggling so hard, and I would call her.
Yeah.
I would call her all the time, and I would lose my shit because I was like emotionally unwell and unstable.
Right. Yeah.
And I didn't know how to communicate my needs at all.
Yeah.
And I would just call like, hey, everything's hitting the fan.
Yeah.
And my mom innately, because you know as a parent she's in pain.
Yeah.
And I know that now, but back then I was like,
right.
what is she doing? And she would always just have you tried this?
Right.
Do this, do this.
Yeah.
I'm like, you don't think I fucking have tried that?
Right.
You don't think I've done all this stuff? And a lot
Yeah.
of it was stuff that, you know, I'm in grad school. I'm broke. I'm balancing all this
Right.
stuff. There's nothing you could literally do unless you want to write me a fat check of
Right.
like $1 million right now,
Right.
just to kind of take that stress away.
Yeah.
I have school, I have work, I have all this stuff on my plate. You can't. My mom couldn't take anything off my plate. I knew
Right.
that.
Yeah.
But she wanted to because she didn't like to see me sad.
Sure.
And eventually, I had to start learning. I remember somebody telling me, "How come you always call your mom then when you're upset? If she makes you more angry?"
Yeah.
And I was like, "That's a good question."
Yeah.
And then I started thinking like, oh, well, because I feel alone.
Yeah.
And I need to get it off my chest. But when I call her, I need to ask her, like, and my boundary with her has been that, like, I don't need your advice.
Right.
I don't need a lecture.
Yeah.
All I really want is, like, I'm just sad and I'm
Yeah.
struggling and I'm not okay and I just need you to listen. And she'll be like, now she'll be like, okay.
Yeah.
And she just, like, my space.
Mm-hmm.
And then after I get off the phone, I'm like, all my problems are still there. But I'm like,
yeah, it's not here.
oh, yeah, it's not in me anymore. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh my God, I felt support.
Right.
And a lot of times I think that's where people are confused.
Yeah.
Like,
Agreed.
how do we fix the problem versus the actual solution is sometimes just to get that relief of,
Right.
okay, I don't feel as alone in it.
Yeah.
You know?
Right. Yeah, I agree. And that's like a really interesting point too, because like when other people don't feel that like isolation and loneliness in your problem, you can't honestly even expect them to fix it, right? Because they're not in your shoes and they don't know what that looks like for you.
Right.
But, you know, asking just for, like you said, like that is a wonderful thing that I've even told my clients, right? Like, before you open your mouth and for someone else's situation, ask them what they're looking for.
Right.
You know, like sometimes I want you to be on my side and be like, yeah, that other person was so wrong in that situation. Like, you know, you're totally 100% right. Sometimes you need that, right? Even if it's not necessarily like the most helpful advice.
Yeah. You're like logically, I know
I know.
kind of being a little crazy, but I have so much emotion. Like, I don't
Yeah.
want to hear you tell me about, hey,
Well, hey,
look at
see
the other
their
person's
side.
perspective.
Right. I
I'm
want you
right
to be
now,
like, yep, you're right.
Yeah, I get
Yep.
it. Everything sucks.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And like sometimes people don't know that because, you know, I'm a logical friend where I don't want to be caught in the middle. And sometimes I try to be realistic, but at the same time, like if someone says, listen, I just need a vent about like how much this person is grating on my nerves, like I'm getting the signal from you that you want me to be like, yeah, you're totally right.
Yeah.
You know, and not looking for like, I think you're overreacting.
Yeah.
Sometimes, like, I don't want to hear that.
Yeah.
You know, like, I think I talked about this a little bit in the last episode too, where, you know, when you're fighting the same battle, like, all day,
Right.
I don't want somebody to tell me, that's not a big deal.
The worst.
You know? Because that is making my problem, which feels like
minimizing
tremendous.
it.
You're making it seem like it's this big, but if you're giving something this big that much power, like, that makes me the crazy one. And I know it's not.
Right, right.
So, you know, that can be really, like, invalidating, but also, like, that, it would make me feel better for you to be like, yeah, that sucks.
Right. And I think what you're saying is so important because that's a lot of times why we form all these strategies to be like, let me not ask.
Right.
Because either our history or other friendships or unhealthy relationships have taught us, like, oh, what's the point of telling X, this person, when I know how they are? And they're just going to be like, you're overreacting, you're being dramatic, it's not a big deal. Be grateful, just look on the bright side, be positive. And it's like, okay.
Yeah.
And then it's like, well, don't tell anybody anything that's going on because that's going to be the response you're going to
Right.
get. And I do believe that it's our job when we care about somebody to still ask for it. And people that love us, I believe in my soul, will be like, yeah, okay, cool. I didn't realize that bothered you. I'm willing to, like, I won't do it next time.
Right.
You know, if me and you started, like, getting in
Yeah.
a topic and I was like, yeah, Gabby, I think you should do this.
Yeah.
Like, we're friends enough to know you could be like, Les, I love you.
Yeah.
But, like, I don't care right now. Just, like, please don't give me advice. And I'd be like, oh.
Oops, my bad.
Damn, I'm sorry. That's not what she needed. Maybe I jumped the gun.
Right.
And I just know now that she just needs, I'm like, okay, yeah, cool.
Yeah,
just vent to me. Just bitch. It's okay. I'm just going to listen and be like, life just sucks right now and I got you.
Yeah.
Because you still feel support like that, you
Exactly. Yeah. And I think what is really difficult these days with friendships and partnerships and whatever, just like being so sensitive, is that other people, maybe rightfully so, still feel entitled to use you as a sounding board, right? And yes, comma, that is part of a friendship, to be there for each other, right? But at the same time, you have to be able to tell your friend, like, I love you. I know this is really hard for you today. I don't have the emotional space to be there in the way that you need today.
Yeah.
So, like, how can I help you in a way that isn't like a nitty gritty conversation, because I can't do this right now.
Right.
And sometimes, like, I have done it, I'm sure everyone has, where you're like, I don't have the capacity for this conversation right now. Like,
And it's not that you don't
dumping,
care about
and it's not that I don't care,
yeah.
but like, do I just suck it up and like deplete myself even further to be there for this person? Or do I have to just stick up for myself sometimes? And that is hard.
Yeah.
You know, like, I know many days I'm running on minimum battery.
Empty.
You know, and it's just because of normal demands on life. It's not just my situation, but like, that's tricky.
Right.
You know, and I don't think that it should be the case that you have to be like a best friend with somebody to feel comfortable enough to say that.
Yeah, for sure.
You know?
Sure. And I think a lot of times there's like, oh, it's my friend, I'm supposed to.
Yeah.
Like, we get our role confused of like what actually is a friend, or like family member. Like family does that a lot, right? And you're like, I have all this going on, but it's my mom. I feel bad. I have to listen to her.
Right.
Oh, she's struggling, but I'm also struggling. But let me just surrender my stuff.
Right.
And you knowing your boundary of like, I think it's more of just knowing where you are.
Right.
And the vulnerable part of like, how do I tell this person like I have no space right now?
Exactly.
Like, I use this tool myself for sure, and my clients will laugh. So I'll be like, you know what I'm about to say when I start saying the sentence. I'll be like, hey, I love you. Because you know it's coming. Right. You know my boundary's coming next. I love you, but like, I just don't have the space right now.
Yeah.
And when I do, 100% I'll be there.
Right.
Right. And like I told you, my friend Amanda. Hi, Amanda. Amanda's gonna watch this too. So, but Amanda are really good at that. When I remember like months ago, we were both like in the pits together, and it's like we both knew we're both in the pits, and neither of us had energy for each other.
Yeah.
But we have that whole like dialogue of like, hey, I'm struggling, and either we both would be like, we know not to dump on each other. And it's like this just sucks right now, and we're like just in it together. Like, let's just sit on the couch and like let's just like not even talk about it. Let's just go and watch TV together. So we're in each other's space, but we both know like, let's not dump on each other.
Right.
And she's very good at this of texting me when she knows she doesn't know where I am, and she'll be like, hey, I have a lot of shit going on, would love your advice, or I would love to talk to you. Like, do you have emotional capacity for me? And there's times I've been like, I love you, but like, today's not the day. And usually I'll be like, hey, but here in the next few days, I know like between like work stuff and stuff calming down, like, I'll check in and I'll see where I am. And they'll be like 2 days later, and I'll be like, hey, are you good? Because like, I have space today.
Right.
So I'm good to like talk about whatever happened the other day. And she's like, oh my God, yeah. And then I'm like, oh,
perfect.
I feel good today.
Yeah.
But if you would have done this 2 days ago, I would have been like, in a nice way, it's like, I don't care. And it's not like,
it's not because you don't care.
It's not because I don't care about the person. It's just like, I don't have the energy to care.
Right.
Because I don't know how to do life today.
Right.
Dealing with myself, let alone being like, okay, how do I show up as a friend and try to force myself to care when I literally just have no energy?
Right.
That's hard.
So here's a personal question. Where do you feel like you are depleted the most, and how do you fill those little cups?
Depleted the most. I think I suck in relationships. When I'm single, I feel like I've been able to maneuver a lot. I think I use my language very well with friends.
Right.
I feel like I've learned a lot about using my language with my family.
Yeah.
And I think I've practiced that for years, so I've gotten good to be like, I trust my friends enough. I have a good group of friends, and even friends that aren't, I guess, as close to me as like my really close friends. Like, I've been friends with you forever. I have a group of friends that I've been friends with, so I trust. The trust has been built.
Yeah. But
I still know I could meet a stranger and hang out with them a few days. I trust that I'd say like, use my boundaries.
Right.
When it comes to, as soon as you enter relationships though, like, things change, right? Because I think the hard thing that I'm learning about myself is like, which in relationships, things change because there's like, you're my friend.
Right. Especially
me and my man, like, we were friends.
Yeah.
And then like the role changes because you're doing life together, you're doing day to day together. So now it's like, I don't know sometimes I'm like, okay, how do I be a good partner? But also I have this going on, but you're also my partner. I know I need to be checking in with you.
Yeah.
It's like, I feel like if I don't talk to you for like a month, it's like, okay, and I can randomly like text you, or I could be like, hey, what's going on? But with my man, I see you all the time. We do life together, day to day. You live with somebody, and I'm like, I have stuff every day.
Yeah.
And sometimes I'll come home and I'm like, I don't want to talk about it, but my man's picking up on it. Like something happened the other week, and I was just like, I could hear myself inside being like, I'm sad. I know I should.
Right.
Which is me telling myself, don't ever follow a should, because should is something, like we should ourselves out of stuff we should be doing.
Right.
And I was like, I know I should tell him like what's going on, but he has a lot going on.
Yeah.
And he has family stuff. He has stuff with his work. He has stuff that like he's struggling and stuff of his own.
Right.
So I don't want to put stuff on his plate.
Yeah.
And because I'm seeing him struggle with stuff day to day,
right,
I'm like more trying to be like, I can handle it myself. I can handle it myself. I don't need his help.
Yeah.
And I can feel him like, well, that's what a relationship is. I'm like,
Right.
well, is it? And I struggle with that.
Yeah.
Because I want to try to like, I'm like, I can take on my own world and I can take on his world. I'm like, but then like, give me weeks and I'm like, I'm unwell.
Right.
Because I'm not asking, or I'm not asking for anything, but just telling him. I feel like I struggle keeping him in the loop of like what's going on with me. If that makes sense.
Yeah. See, I feel like for me, I am kind of the opposite, where maybe because my like in-person adult interaction is lacking, like yes, I do play dates, like yes, I do all this stuff, like I want to talk shit. And
with adults.
With an adult. And like who better than your partner, right?
Yeah.
The hard thing for me is that I feel like he's more like you in that respect, where like he doesn't think it's like necessarily that important to share like tidbits, right, of the day, or like things that are stressing him out. He wants to deal with on his own, which I respect. But I need to trauma dump sometimes my stressors of my day, and it's not me just being negative. It's like I want to connect with you because I need to tell you all of these things that are depleting me, so maybe you understand why I am in a mood, or why I just want to go to bed, or why I want quiet.
Yeah.
You know, like things that maybe are difficult for someone to understand.
Right.
You know, like.
And it's with your kids, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, yeah, our kids were fucking terrorists.
Exactly.
Today.
Right.
Like, can I tell you about how shitty it was?
Right. And it's not me complaining about being a parent. It's not that. It's just that, like, I want connection. So, yes, I want to hear your BS from the grown-up world.
Right.
If there's tea, I want it. And it's not because, like, I want to gossip. It's just because, like, wow, that happened. That's crazy.
You're like, let me be an adult because I'm stuck with these infants all day.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, and, like, I want to listen to music that isn't Disney. Or I want to, you know, watch a show that isn't animated. You know, like, I want quiet. Sometimes. And no, I understand that your cup is filled when you can go outside and put music on and go in the pool. That's not what I want.
You're like, you guys are like totally different in that aspect.
Like my needs at the end of the day is because I've had stimulation all day and I want quiet. I want to go in bed.
You've been touched all day.
Don't touch me. You know, and again, it's not because I don't want that connection, but like I don't even want the dog touching me.
Yeah.
It's you know,
you hear that about moms a lot. Like moms are just like overly stimulated with that touch.
Yep. So like those are some ways that like I'm just, my threshold for just stimulation is getting, I mean it's gotten higher because I'm a parent, but like once I'm there, I am there.
Yeah. And
my mood will plummet if I have to continue dealing with it, you know? So like my cup is empty by the end of the day, you know?
What do you think is like in your ideal world where everything was perfect? Like when your man got home and the kids, and you had like, say you had a shitty day.
Yeah.
Like what do you think you know is your main, like, is it that like, let me just vent to you about what happened, or like, what do you think ideally you know would help you feel more connected and stuff like that?
I think that, and we've had this conversation many times, so this isn't new. I think it would help to understand that like you and your partner always have full-time jobs, like whether you're a stay-at-home parent or you're a working parent, whatever, your job doesn't stop when you're a parent ever. So I understand that like working all day a traditional job seems like, okay, well I need time to unwind, but like I've been doing the same job since I opened my eyes. I need a minute too. So what would help is to maybe just have like time, like you seem aggravated. That's what I want to be told. You seem like a little on edge.
Yeah.
Do you want to go take a shower? And I got this for 30 minutes. Like, just go, lock the door.
Yeah.
You know, and sometimes that's what that would be refreshing. That would help.
Yeah.
Just to be, like, maybe understood. Like, I would be in a shitty mood, too, if I was fighting with 4-year-olds all day.
Right. Yeah.
You know, it's literally a battle that you, again, have to win, but can't always win.
Yeah. Kind of like see how much I've been through today.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, and empathize with it and be like, yep, you're kind of in a crappy mood.
Yeah.
But, like, I get it. Let's alleviate that somewhat so that we can all be in a good place.
Yeah.
You know, and, like, again, just understand that everyone's needs are going to be different for support. Like, for my support is sometimes the house is wrecked at the end of the day, and I have cleaned it 25 times, and it's still wrecked. So, you know, like, if anyone, you know, like, even I have visitors and my mom here, like, want me to help you pick up? Like,
Yeah.
you know, my in-laws come and they're great. Hey, okay, let's do cleanup time. I don't have to do it
Right.
for the 26th time.
So
it takes something off my plate where I can be like, okay, now I have headspace to, like, go make myself a cup of coffee. Like, eats for the first time today.
Right.
You know?
Take a breath.
Yeah, just, you know,
Yeah.
take a second. Where, you know, your mind, and, like, that's what's been really hard for me, that, like, the way that I have used my brain for the majority of my life has been very intentional, right? Like, to go to school and get my degrees.
Very different.
Very different. And yes, I'm grateful that I did that because I'm good at multitasking, but again, like, the amount of ways that I have to compartmentalize my mind I can't even count them.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, I always say, like, and I'll teach this all the time, and I can't imagine, because I don't have children, but even when I have, like, too many people, right? It's just like, and with, like we said, with kids, it's different because they're kids.
Right.
So you do not want your kid to have to worry about you.
Yeah.
That's just not ideal at all.
Right.
And innately that will happen because they pick up on energy. But
Sure.
like when it's just yourself, if it's just me and I have a stressful day, I know, like, I can be like, my day was kind of shitty. Like, I was just tired. I went out, and, like, maybe something bad happened or something annoying happened, and I'm like, all right, I'm a little annoyed. What do I need?
Yeah.
And so it's easy. It's an easy kind of, not easy, I say it, but I promise you it's not even easy.
Straightforward.
But it's straightforward, like, figuring out what your need is by yourself.
Right.
All right? And then I'm like, okay, say you put in a partner. And it's like, okay, now there's 2 people. So now it's like, okay, say I had an annoyed day and I get home. Oh, but shit, my man had an annoyed day too.
Right.
Okay, so now I have to worry about what's my need. And then my man comes home. I'm like, okay, now I'm aware I need something, but also I have to check in with him because he might need something.
Right.
Okay, but now we're going to drop a kid.
Right.
And then
or
it's
a dog.
like, okay, a kid, a dog, multiple kids.
Right.
And like the why family dynamics are so difficult is literally your needs can never be met as one person.
Exactly.
And now you're like, I know I have to give all of myself to these kids. And then I always like imagine this scene of like picture you, like you have 3 kids and a husband. So all of you in the same space, one kid could do one little thing.
Right.
And you have emotion about how you viewed it. You're like, the kid pissed me off. I'm literally about to lose my shit. All right, I'm frustrated, but like, I'm also aware that my man's having an experience about what's happening. He's also looking at me. He's having an experience with me too. And now the 2 other kids are also figuring out what's going on with this kid. And then looking at mom and dad, like, what are you guys going to do? So the brain can't process all that at once. Like, there's too much happening to know, like, whose need gets met.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Like,
it's like I have to look out for me, but do I look out for is my husband about to lose his shit on them too?
Right.
How do I calm him down? But how do I calm myself down? And then how do I make sure? There's just so much happening that it, like, even picturing it, I'm like
it's a lot.
overwhelmed and like, and there's no formula to it. And I think that's what a lot of people come in like, Les, what do you do? And I'm like, you have to just know what you need. I teach this, and it's not always, every family is going to be different, every person's going to be different, but you practice that stuff. Like, if you and your partner are like, hey, when we know one of our kids has this attitude at this age, so when she throws her little tantrum, what are we gonna do? So that we're on the same page when the other kids have their, like, that's like the formula. Like, we got to keep practicing and practicing. And when clients are like, well, how do you know it's gonna work? I'm like, you don't. You literally have to practice, communicate, practice, communicate, and see. It's like a trial and error. Just like any type of research, we're gonna do trial and error.
Yeah, and honestly, I can say that, you know, one of the biggest things for me has been like I wanted to deviate a little bit more towards like the gentle parenting approach when I was a younger mom.
Be like
first-time
gentle
mom.
but direct.
Right. I have gotten a lot more like I just don't care. Like you have your feelings, but like I need to get through the day,
Right.
and I can't
Especially you have
sit and
three.
talk to
It's
you.
not
And
like
like
one
I will
anymore.
credit my mom if she watches this eventually for like telling me like you need to get a thicker skin because I didn't ever want my kids to like be afraid of me or be like mom is so mean, but at the same time like I need to get through the day. And since I have just been like, okay, you know what, you want to act like that, okay, this is what we're gonna do, like you know what's gonna happen. And like I love you, you can have your moment, like it's okay to cry, I don't want you to be sad, but like figure it out. Let's move on with our day, because I can't have like a therapy session 100 times a day times 2 every time you have a feeling, you know.
Right, I think
figure it out.
I think it's that part, because even when I have parents come in and ask like, how do you emotionally show up for your kids, I'm like, obviously gentle parenting. I think it's hard because our generation went towards that, right?
Yeah.
Which is great, because
Right.
we're not saying like, hey, shut up all the time,
Yeah,
and
like
you're
hit
wrong
your
and
kids.
sit down,
Right.
and like, which is great. We've came a long way, but there is like a point of
permissiveness.
like you can be gentle,
Yeah.
but to an extent.
Right.
Like you also have to be direct. You also a lot of times parents are like, I don't want to discipline my kid. Consequences are going out of the way because like I don't want them to be this, and this.
Right.
And all, like you said, when you have kids, things are happening all day.
Yeah,
it's not
right.
just like, hey, me and my man got in this big fight.
Yeah.
So let's figure it out and talk about it in depth.
Yeah.
You can't do that with an infant all day because they don't have a full brain.
Exactly.
So it's like they're gonna piss you off 2 minutes later.
Right.
And then it's like every time you have to be like, hey, come over here.
Yeah,
Do
you're
you know why you're
frustrated.
upset? I know
No.
you're frustrated. No,
Yeah.
sometimes, of course, is that healthy? Is that ideal?
Sure.
Yes, but that's not
But
realistic.
life doesn't stop.
Yeah.
You know? And I feel like this is why teachers are good at what they do, right? Because teachers are able to say, listen, 1 out of 30 of you is going to be rude. I'm not stopping what I'm doing for the other 29 to deal with you.
Yeah.
So I'm going to ignore that, but I made a note of it.
Right.
You know?
Right.
And like, that's, honestly, I have been filling my own cup by being that way and not being so like in the trenches with like feelings. And like, I know as a therapist that sounds like weird. Because that's what we do, right? Like we deal with emotion, we deal on feeling, we deal with behavior, but like
you're also
that's
not,
what I needed.
You're also not talking about one child.
Right.
And obviously you can't still do it with one child, but
Right.
like with the type of therapy I do, we always do like ideal scenes of like ideal parenting, which that's why I always say ideal.
Yeah.
And it's like ideally it is like that. It's
Yeah.
like, hey, I can meet your need, and that interaction is always going to be like pleasant.
Right.
But the reality is, we always teach, nothing is actually ideal. Why?
Exactly.
Because parents need to focus on themselves,
Yeah.
and there's things that are happening, and the more kids you have,
Right. The more divided that is.
yeah, and the less need you're going to be able to meet because
Right.
you're only one person.
Exactly.
So it's like, if you're going to try to do that all day, you will not. It's not possible
Nothing's gonna get
anyway.
done. Yeah.
And
Right.
and then there's a point of teaching a kid too. Like,
Right.
is it always going to be like? Because in the real world, I think that's the reality of it.
Yeah.
Like, you're at a job when you're an adult, and
Mhm.
you're gonna throw a tantrum. Nobody's gonna be like, "Hey, I see you're frustrated."
You're having a tough day. It's gonna
It's
be like,
like,
go pack your
"Hey,
stuff.
use your words. Are you frustrated?" Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen you do it. So you're like, "Are you frustrated? Okay, well, we'll
Yeah.
figure it out. Like, we
Exactly,
have
yeah.
to. You go figure out what happened."
Yeah.
And I think a lot of parents are confused. It seems too, because we are doing that whole like.
Right.
There's like a pendulum swing of
Yeah.
like old school generation that are like, I always
And
use
then
like military
basically do
example
nothing.
that are like,
Children lead.
yeah, like parent centered, like children are meant to be seen, not heard. You sit there, be quiet, obey, all this stuff. And we're trying to be like, how do we make kids like show up for their emotions? But then it's like, this isn't reality
Right.
either.
It's
It's like
not.
it has to be a balance of
Yeah.
disciplined, direct, but sometimes kind. And then
Right.
also, like one of my clients, I love her so much, and she's a great mom, and I've seen her have so many kids at different ages. But like she'll come on sessions and be like, I fucked up again.
Yeah.
And I'm laughing because I'm like, you didn't though.
Yeah,
like
you didn't.
you had a reaction. You now have multiple children.
Right.
And she's like, I was doing so good. I'm like, what is good though?
Yeah,
like
right.
good is never reacting, never like your kid
Yeah.
pissed you off. She's like, yeah, I lost my shit. I'm like, yeah, because you had the 2 babies
Yeah.
causing chaos, and then your older one came
Just
in with,
messing around
and
an
then
attitude.
you're like, oh my god, can you be
Yeah.
quiet? And she's
Right.
like, I'm trying to communicate and like talk to my kids nicer, but sometimes I lose my shit. And I'm like, that's normal.
That's okay.
Like,
Yeah.
don't, as long as you're not beating yourself up and you're like,
Yeah.
okay, I mean,
Right.
for the most of the day I did pretty well,
Exactly.
and there was a moment I lost my shit.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I think that's what parents need permission too, of like,
Right.
you're gonna react because you're a human.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, is it gonna be all day every day? Hopefully
Right.
not.
Yeah, and that's important because I think that in having our needs met, when you don't have them met for a long time, you have that intense reaction, right?
Because
And
that build up of
because
emotion.
it's just built up, yeah. And then it's like, oh well, I can never talk to you because you explode. But yeah, you explode because you don't talk to, you don't ever talk about it, or you don't ever unload, or just like, find an outlet for what it is that you're going through.
Yeah.
So
I always try to say like sprinkle the seeds, especially like I guess in the sense of like friendships or like relationships. Especially I always say like my boundary is this, and I say this in general of like getting some of my needs met. If I don't even know what it is yet, I'll say like I don't want to talk about it. Like, hey, I want to say something, but I just don't want to talk about it right now because like I know it feels too big, and I know I'm like I'm just not in a place to deal with this. But let me at least put it as like a seed of like this is something that's something.
Right.
So I don't eventually. So you kind of have an idea of what's going on.
Right.
But I don't want this drawn out conversation right now.
Yeah.
And it kind of just gives you like breadcrumbs, like, oh, okay, now it becomes easier to talk about that way too.
Yeah, and I think also it's a good way of getting support, because if you're making the people around you understand that like you are going through something, you're not just fine.
Right.
They can be like, okay, yeah, I know that there's a couple like prickly things under your skin. Like, I get you don't want to talk about it, but like, I'm here.
Yeah.
Right? Like, when you're ready for that, let's have that conversation. Like, what can I do for you now?
Yeah.
Whereas, you're just like, okay, well, I'm going to deal with it myself. All the time is hard because people feel like, oh, you're good. Okay, well, I'm not good.
Right.
You're here for me because you're good.
Right.
Right? And that's just it's not the case.
Yeah.
So, what can people do better with balancing meeting other people's needs and being supportive and being a good friend or partner or parent, while also not being on empty all the time?
I would say it sounds so simple. Again, it's not.
Yeah.
I think majority of the population, I know we're talking because we know psych knowledge, right? So I think that's hard, and I'm trying to make it like, again, we all have stuff.
Yeah.
Obviously, me and Gabby struggle with this too, and we have all the tools in the world. But a lot of people lack even that check-in.
Yeah.
Right? Like, when I say like I don't know what I need, it takes me even time to figure it out. But even that step of like, where am I at?
Yeah.
And what do I need? Is it support, or is it just like, do I just need some love and nurturance, and like, do I want to just like go to my man or go to my friends and be like, I just want to cry on the couch with you?
Right.
But I do think putting things out there and letting people know like this is where I am, and asking if they have asking, hey, do you have space or time for me?
Right.
But also being aware like where you are, and if there's a lot going on, why you're not asking for what you need.
Right. Do you think that a lot of the therapy tools that we give out, like journaling and that kind of thing, is really helpful for this type of like self check-in? Because I know that like I struggle a lot with being consistent about things like that. But is it a habit that maybe nobody is really practicing?
Yeah, I mean journaling is one of like the main things to help you understand yourself, right? I hate journaling because I hate writing. Like I hate, and it's crazy because I think it just depends on the person you are. I know it's a good exercise.
Yeah.
Even though he has a therapist, like I will tell you, journal.
Yeah.
I do like a thing, and me and one of my clients laugh because I'm like, listen, I'm just gonna be honest, I don't like to journal. There's certain times I found myself doing it just because I'm like, I just need to get something out. But I will talk into my phone.
Yeah.
And I will do like the voice text to myself because I find myself like when I'm really angry or I'm in this place, I don't have the patience to sit with myself, which is something you do need to practice.
Right.
But I kind of want to just get it all out really fast. And I'm like, ugh. And I'll just blurt it out and then give myself time and go back and read it. And I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah. I can actually kind of see why I'm frustrated.
Right.
And a lot of times talking it out with people too. Like obviously that's what therapy is about. It's like journaling, but it's having somebody help you see while you're in it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think journaling is just a great tool in general.
See, I think that's why, like, and we've done this also, like voice messaging each other, where it's like, you don't have to listen to this right now.
We say that too.
And
See,
we
that's
do.
the verbiage.
Exactly. Because you can say a lot and get it out. And you're like, wow, I talked to my friend. Even if your friend isn't like listening to it.
We'll have like voice
Right
messages about back, and I'm
Yeah.
like, wow, Gabby just sent me like 17-minute long voice messages. And
Yeah.
you're like, hey, just for when you get to it, which is
Yeah.
like you expressing to me like I had to go on a rampage to somebody or something.
Right.
But like you don't need
You
to
don't-
respond
yeah,
right now.
exactly.
Like when you get to it, you get
Yeah.
to it. And I'm always like, okay, I'll get to it later. Hey, and sometimes I'll say that I'm like, hey, I'll respond to this whenever I'm
Yeah,
free.
right. Exactly. Yeah, so like pro tip, voice message your friends.
I'm a sucker for a good voice
Yeah,
message because
you
you're
know.
right. That's kind of it's not journaling. Journaling's healthy too,
Yeah,
but that is a way just to get everything out.
right.
And it's just if it's somebody your safe spot, you're like I can ask if I want feedback or I wonder what they can say
Right.
back to me. You know?
Yeah. Yeah, so that's my way.
Yeah. Do you think you struggle reaching out to friends because you're a mom of 3? And I guess for me, like I don't have kids too, and I know like you're close to Dylan, so
Yeah.
I know Dylan has a
Hi,
baby. Hi, Dylan. Do you find it like harder to reach out to certain people than other people or friend groups when you're struggling with certain stuff?
I think that this is, maybe a good topic for us to talk about at some point too, like the different types of friendships that you
Yeah.
have, right? Like I have mom friends that I'm friends with because our kids play together, but that's not necessarily a person that I would be like, hey, let's hang out, or like, let me voice message you.
Yeah.
They'd probably be like, wow, she's crazy. And I do have like certain friends, even that are not parents, that I can be like, I know that like you don't exactly understand the experience, but like I had a really tough day, and
Yeah.
these are all the backstories to what made it so bad. I think it depends. I definitely say that I'm lucky that I have a lot of people that are good support systems for me, that I know that I can go through a list in my head like, okay, for this particular rant or this particular problem, I know I have 1, 2, 3 people that would be receptive and like not think I'm insane.
Mm-hmm.
But again, there are some things that are very private also,
Yeah.
where you're like, I kind of just feel safe with like this one person, like outside your family or outside your relationship or whatever. Yeah, I mean, I think some people are not fortunate to have that kind of closeness with anyone, and I can't imagine like how lonely that is.
Yeah, so practice that.
Yeah, so
Find
like
your
make
people.
good friends, people.
And it's
you
easier
know?
said than done, especially the older you get. That's
Yeah.
easier said than done. But
Agreed.
it's important to have that.
Yeah. So I would say yes, I feel very comfortable, and I think it really just depends on what it is too.
Mm-hmm.
Like there.
Well, I think it was funny because now that we're talking about it, when I was here, I don't know when was I here, and I started crying on the couch because I was like I want to hang out with you more.
Yeah.
And you're like I want to hang out with you more, and we're like both in our heads about like I'm like oh she has kids.
Yeah.
She doesn't want to hang out with me as much. She wants to be like with like Dylan because Dylan has a kid now, so they can relate more.
Right.
And you were like, oh, well, I also think like
You're busy.
you don't have kids. You're not gonna want to come here. You're busy. You travel. You have all your friends. You do all this fun stuff with.
Right.
I didn't want to ask you to take time out of your day to come just here with my kids.
Right.
And that's what we were both at like that crying moment of
Yeah.
like we both actually want to hang out, but both of us are like worried about each other.
Right.
Like we live different lives, and
Yeah.
so we're trying to be like, oh,
Respectful,
maybe not.
like, yeah.
Which we said that, and it was like vulnerable conversations. We made a point
Right.
to be like, no, we like need to make more time for each other,
Exactly.
regardless, because we both want it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you know what I also think is really good. I mean, about the friendship that we have, in particular, obviously, but like, I feel like I don't hold it against you if like we have plans and like we can't keep
Right,
them,
right.
and like that's just like it's life, right? And okay, so what?
Right.
Like I get it, but that's another way like we meet each other's needs, right? Like I'm not gonna force you to drive all the way out here if you're not feeling up to it, or I know the same would be the opposite too,
Right.
And
sometimes we'll be like, hey, which I get. Some people are like, I need a plan, which
Right.
I am a planner. I
Yeah,
love plans,
same.
but we're also like aware like how much we both have going on in our
Right.
lives separately. So it's like if, hey, tentatively, let's put this here.
Yeah.
If something comes up
Right,
the day
we'll figure
before,
it
we'll
out.
figure it out.
Yeah.
And that is important to have,
Yeah.
especially when you have kids, especially when you have like a lot of
Mhm.
like my work stuff and whatever.
Right.
And being empathetic about that
Right.
is important.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's not personal. We don't take it personal, right?
Exactly.
A lot of times people are like, oh.
Yeah,
so
oh,
personal.
well, you're not here for me.
Right.
You know.
Like, what?
Right, yeah, what do you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, so, I don't know, I think, it's hard to, like, make good relationships that are respectful of your boundaries and your needs, and, like, maybe just that you lead different lives, too. Like, there are friendships, too, that, like, I've lost just because it has been very one-sided, right?
Well, then it was meant to be lost.
Exactly.
You know?
Right, which in the moment doesn't feel great.
No, not at all.
You know, but what you're looking for is not what the people in your support system are looking for.
Yeah.
Either you communicate about it and be like, I can't give you what you need in like emotionally, but like we're good to hang out.
Yeah.
You know, like understanding that too maybe would alleviate some of the guilt that you might feel about asking for more from someone who can't give it to you.
Yeah.
You know.
And I think we could end on this as like a general. Since our topic is about asking for needs, but also being there for other people's needs, it leads back to what we talked about the first episode, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like communication of, hey, I'm struggling.
Right.
Oh, the other person being able to say, me too.
Yeah.
And us all being on the same page, because you can still get your needs met.
Right.
Just maybe not in an ideal way, but
Mm-hmm.
it still helps when you're able to say stuff out loud, even if you don't know if you're going to get it met.
Right, exactly.
And people that, like your example of like losing friends, like, and that's why I said I believe in my soul, people that love you will work with you,
right.
not against you. And if you feel like they're working against you, maybe they're not your people, right? So asking, and then really just figuring out like, how can we get better at this as a team?
Yeah,
you know?
Exactly. So. Yeah. So
I feel like after this, I have a lot more topics for other for other episodes that I definitely want to touch base on.
Yeah,
so.
for sure. So yeah, I guess we have lots of planning to do.
Yeah. So if you guys see this and listen, if you have any ideas of stuff that you struggle to ask for support, help, your needs with, we'd love to hear it, because obviously we both have our own issues because we all have stuff.
Right.
So until next time.
Bye guys.
Bye.
All right, 47 minutes. That's good.